And welcome back to Bayou Time. I'm Martin False, and on Saturday, once again, a great event here in Terrebonne Parish, but of course, the church and Pastor Steve Fulmer are so close between Houma and Thibodaux. A lot of people from the area attended the 2022 SOLA Men's Conference, and some great guest speakers were there. And let's start off, I had a chance to interview Lee Strobel, and you might have heard of Lee Strobel, The Case for Christ, and other movies that were made on behalf of himself and his journey. And his journey was that he did not believe in God. But you'll hear in the interview that a few things that took place brought him to the realization that his research led him to believe it's impossible to go through life and not think that we have a Lord above. What a great story. I was listening to your story, and very intriguing. You sort of went full circle.
I did, that's true.
Talk a little bit about that, and that message is going to be relayed to a lot of people in the audience today.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's welcomed quite a bit.
Well, you know, I was an atheist for much of my life. My background's in journalism and law, so I tend to be a skeptic. And my wife was agnostic, didn't know what to believe about God. And she met a woman who brought her to church. She heard the message of Jesus. She became a Christian, which I thought was the worst news I could get as an atheist husband. So I tried to rescue her from this cult that she'd gotten involved in by disproving the resurrection. So I used my journalism and legal training to investigate the historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. And I did that for 2 years until I concluded that it would take more faith to maintain my atheism than to become a Christian, based on the evidence I encountered during that investigation.
But through your degree and through your investigative skills, I'm sure you were very determined to prove that there was no God, no Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, I realize even as an atheist that all of Christianity is dependent on the resurrection of Jesus. Because clearly he made transcendent and messianic and divine claims about himself. But so what? I could do that. I could claim to be God. Anybody, well, maybe not you, but anybody could claim to be God. But if Jesus claimed to be God, died, and then 3 days later rose from the dead, that's pretty good evidence he's telling the truth. So I was shocked at how much historical data there is, how much evidence from history that there is that Jesus was truly dead after being crucified and was truly alive on the third day after that.
What was the turning point where everybody through an investigation, whether you're a police officer, whether you're doing what you're doing, sits down and goes, this is the smoking gun, right?
Yeah. You know, most of the things that we believe about the ancient world are based on one or two sources. And yet for the conviction of the disciples that they did encounter the resurrected Jesus, we have no fewer than 9 ancient sources, inside and outside the New Testament, confirming and corroborating the conviction of the disciples that they encountered the risen Jesus. That is an avalanche of historical data. And that was kind of the turning point for me.
Did you ever think they'd be making movies?
No, you know, it was a number of years. I came to faith in 1981, and then in 2017, they released a motion picture globally called The Case for Christ, based on our story. And it was a thrill and a lot of fun to do that film. And now we have a new movie coming out in April 4th, 5th, and 6th, called The Case for Heaven, which is based on an experience I had about 10 years ago when I nearly died, and realized that it was worth my time to really determine once and for all what does happen when you're dead. Is there a life to come? Is there an afterlife? And so I wrote a book called The Case for Heaven, and so the documentary will be in theaters April 4th, 5th, and 6th all around the country.
But in your message with people in this audience today, everybody's wondering.
Yeah.
They're always questioning.
Yeah.
But when they hear from somebody who went full gambit, it makes them believe even more, doesn't it?
Well, I think that even Christians are surprised at the depth of the evidence that supports the existence of God and the truth of the Christian claims. I was certainly surprised as an atheist. I expected literally to be able to disprove it in a weekend. And yet it took 2 years of delving into the evidence that ultimately convinced me that it was true.
Just like you, your degree might have made you want to
disprove.
Yeah.
I guess in the long run, it made you confirm.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of people would think that the more you learn about evidence, the more you learn about the law and how it applies and so forth, then maybe you would become increasingly skeptical. For me, it was the other way around.
Yeah.
That those investigative skills I had as a journalist and as a person trained in law really equipped me to be able to delve into the historical evidence and really come to a conclusion that was based not on wishful thinking or legend or mythology, but really based on a solid foundation of historical reality.
So what do you tell all us Cajuns today? And I'm sure you've had conversations with Pastor Steve Fulm, a great guy.
Yeah.
And so does your message change from place to place to sort of morph it into who you're talking to?
You know, it generally doesn't. I generally just tell my story, and people tend to find it fascinating. And I think for the believer, it deepens their faith. For the person who's kind of spiritually curious and doesn't really know what they believe, many people have found faith through my story. And so that to me is the most exciting thing, to see people's faith come alive. You know, we're just coming out of a pandemic. 29% of Americans know someone who's died from COVID. My brother died during the COVID pandemic. And I think a lot of people are asking questions these days. Is there a God? And is there an afterlife? Is there life after death? And those are important questions to ask. And when we get those answers, I think it helps us rest a little deeper and more confident at night.
So you come to home and everybody I'm talking to remembers where they were, what they were doing when the home run occurred. And I know you've answered this 10,000 times, but looking back at that, how did that set the tone for the rest of your life?
Well, it definitely gave me a story to tell. You know, it's funny, 26 years ago, and I bet a week doesn't go by that somebody doesn't come up to me and they tell me where they were, what they were doing, and it's just amazing to me that, you know, people remember that moment so vividly. And seems like half of them either got so excited they hit their head or their hand on the ceiling fan. But just fun. Over the years, so many people I've gotten to meet that wanted to share that story that otherwise they would have had no reason to come up and say hi to me. But I really believe, you know, it's given me an opportunity, gave me a platform and kind of a chance to come share, you know, and just to tell, like I am today, about what God's done in my life and how He has a plan for all of us. So who knows? You never know what your home run moment is, or what your moment that is, you know, you're able to step up and do something that people will remember. But I think if we're ready, God has a plan for all of us, and it's kind of up to us whether we want to accept it or not.
Yeah, and as I'm sitting here talking to you, God used that moment for you. But I have to ask you, was God prevalent in your life when you hit the home run? Did God come into your life after? When did it all start taking place for you?
No, most definitely. My parents were great. You know, I was raised in the church, and so I was a believer from a young age. Through that year, and it's a little bit of what my story and I was going to share today, you know, through injury and just doubt and wondering that same season whether I was even going to get to play at all, and then to come back and really just, you know, at one point just give it to God and say, I don't know what you want me to do for the rest of this year, if it doesn't even involve baseball, but it's yours. And so I'm not worrying about it anymore, and really I stuck to that. And you know, from there on, you know, just seemed like God had a plan, and it wasn't all roses, wasn't all home runs every day, but just the way it ended, I just don't believe it was by coincidence. I think, you know, it was a story that I have that hopefully can help other people, you know, when they're going through other issues, and have something to believe and look forward to, that, hey, you know, we never know what's right around the corner, and, you know, only God does, but if we just trust in Him, you never know where that will lead.
It's amazing how everybody remembers the home run, but they didn't realize, well, I'm sure a lot of people did, you went on to have a pretty good career in the pros. I think you hit 15 home runs one year. So it's not just a walk-off home run that you're all about, but God seemed to use that walk-off home run, because that's what everybody still wants to talk about.
Oh yeah, now, and I understand. I mean, I'm as big a LSU fan as anyone. most people in Louisiana, they don't care that I played after LSU or anything. But yeah, you know, there's more to it. I would have never dreamed. I even got to represent the USA in the Olympics and win a bronze medal, and then to play in the major leagues. And heck, I used to collect baseball cards as a kid. Just never thought I would be on one. So really just a dream come true. And you know, again, just goes to show if in my own, you know, thoughts would have tried to come up with a plan or an ending for my story, it wouldn't have been as great as what God had in store. So, you know, that's why I just encourage people to trust in Him and just look to Him daily.
And I also have to bring up the fact that you were the valedictorian
That's right.
in your class. So for a lot of young kids that are watching, it's not just about what you do in the athletic field.
Right.
You got to hit the books.
No, definitely. But honestly, that was the key to all of it, because most people don't realize when I was at LSU, I was there on an academic scholarship. I was never on an athletic scholarship. So if I didn't do well in school, and you know, I looked at school like I did the sports arena, I thought it was a competition. Leading by example is huge. The more that we can do the right things and, you know, share our mistakes, but also at the same time share that you know, that the things you do now make a difference, and you know, we learn from those mistakes. I've always believed that there aren't anything that God can't use. So even whenever you think, you know, I've strayed from everything, I think God works in that, and then that's part of your story that maybe helps someone that's going through that same issue in their life.
You go to work. At the end of the day, in baseball, you start at home plate, and your goal is to just get back safely home. That's all we want to do. At the end of the day, just get back safely home. What I love about it, too, is you don't have to be, look at me, you don't have to be 6'5". You don't have to bench press 400 pounds. You don't have to be able to jump out of the gym, but you do have to have heart, and you got to be mentally tough. And what I mean by that is, think about this. In Cooperstown, New York, is the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. It's a great place. If you ever get the chance, small town, but the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame and the greats of the greats are all put in there. Well, if you look, the hitters, their batting average, the ones that are in there, if you can bat 300 and do it over a long period of time, 18, 20 years, you get voted and you get put in as the greatest baseball player of all time. Well, but think about that. That means in 10 times at bat, they got to hit 3 times and got out 7 times. Those of you in school, if you go take a test with 10 questions on it, you get 3 right and 7 wrong, that's a 30%, that's an F. But in baseball, you're going to the Hall of Fame.
I've followed Lee Strobel for a lot of years. In our school, I teach 11th and 12th grade Bible, and every year I make the kids give me a book review on his book, Case for Christ, because we have so many that think, well, I just don't believe in God, but they don't have any intellectual basis for not believing in God. They don't have any intellectual basis for believing in God. And so what Lee did with that book is he chronicled through all of the major disciplines the evidence for God. And so it's hard to go through that book and be an atheist. And so I've been following Lee a long time. As far as Warren, I first heard him speak at Louisiana College at a baseball banquet probably 12 years ago, and was very impressed with his testimony and his life story.
Does it reinforce what you believe? I know you're a big believer. I mean, you teach it all the time. But when you hear affirmations from all kinds of different people, it's got to pump you up too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what we live for, is to see people come to the kingdom of God. We believe as Christians that God created every one of us for a relationship with Him. Louis Pascal said that God created a God-shaped void in every human being that only He could fill. We believe that. And so what happens with people like Lee, that God's given above average intelligence that folks like me don't have, you know, that he can say things in a way and document things in a way that I never could. And Warren, look, let's face it, we're an athletic culture in America. And so anybody that has the story he has, people will listen to them. And so they excite me by the nature of the fact that they have the ability to reach so many more people, worldwide, literally.
You know, when I was talking to Lee, I sort of alluded to the fact, you're right, above average intelligence, degree in law. He had all the tools to prove that God does not exist.
Right.
But all of a sudden, all of his tools and his intelligence were put on an avenue where he had to look at the evidence and say,
Yeah.
okay, he does.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, and most people never get into these, but there are really heady books written on these topics. And there are many, many brilliant non-believers, theological people, philosophical people, engineering people, I mean, you name it, they're out there that have studied all of this, and they usually conclude with things like, well, I'm not sure I believe in God, but it's clear there's an organization to this creation, you see. And so they will admit something organized happened here. We're not sure if God did it, but it wasn't an accident. And so you find so many of the world's most intelligent people conceding there was a created act. They'll stop short of saying, I believe in God, but they're in essence saying, something created this I can't explain.
Well, if you really dwell on it and you go into infinite terms,
Yeah.
and you keep thinking back of how it got started, you keep thinking back and you keep thinking back, it'll blow your mind if you think about it too much.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And here's one of the simplest things, Martin. We don't get it. Genetics has never jumped. For example, a cow never becomes a horse. Cows give us cows. Humans give us humans. And so the whole premise that we've evolved from something else is destroyed if you'll just look around you. Genetics never jump. Even in animals, dogs are still dogs. We have mutations of dogs. We have a million variations of dogs where we've crossbred them, but they're still dogs. Right. You know, they never at one point became a monkey. So
You got a good crowd in there.
we've got several hundred men, from all around the area. Some as far away as Baton Rouge. I had some men here last night, Baton Rouge, Lutcher, Gramercy, and then of course from everywhere in our area here. So it's grown every year since we started. It's been good.
Once again, a great Saturday in Houma, Louisiana. I want to thank Pastor Steve Fulmer, his entire staff, for allowing HTV in to get a few words from the guest speakers and also the pastor himself. It was certainly a great event. We look forward to carrying that each and every year. We'll take a short break. We'll be back with more Bayou Time right after this.